So we're back over here. The block is in the boring machine, and I just wanted to take a few moments to show you, kind of how this boring machine works. It's a pretty amazing piece of equipment. I really like it. It's an accurate boring machine. It does a very good job, and it's quick and pretty easy to use. It's made by Quickway, the boring stand, and the boring bar up there is an older Van Norman boring bar. It's a very true boring bar. I like it a lot. Anyways, so first step, you need to raise the block. It's just kind of sitting on the stand right now. You need to raise it into the proper position. So let me see if I can do that one-handed. What you have to do is rock the block kind of forward a little bit. Just try to hold it with my knee close to where you want it to end up. There's a switch over here that you flip up and down. What that'll do is it'll raise the block up to the bottom of the boring stand. So here we are. It's raised up, but it's not perfect, so I need to redo it because I didn't line this side up properly. So let me try that again. There we go. Hey, now you can see the whole thing, I think. Lower the block down so I can reposition. And it should start going down in a second. Yep, there it is. Okay. I'm going to move the block right where I want it. Move my alignment parallels where I want them. And then bring the block up slowly into the right spot. Man, did it again. Okay, we're looking pretty good. So I'm lined up where I want to be. I always take a hammer and just quickly bump the block on its side just to make sure it's fully seated. Take the wooden end of the hammer there, tap it a few times, make sure that it's in there, it's not going to move, because it's basically clamping. The machine clamps the block into place based on that switch that you flipped, sends air to an air bag and pushes the block up. I just want to make sure everything's settled and good. Okay, now here comes the fun part. So you have to take the boring bar and align it to the cylinder that you're actually boring. And so the way you do that on this machine is you have a control panel over here that has a few switches that we're going to deal with. One is lock. We're going to unlock the machine and we're going to hit float. When you hit float, it sends air in between the boring bar and the stand and allows it basically to move back and forth. Oops, that was something I laid on the head over there. Anyways, it allows it to move back and forth kind of like an air hockey table. Floats on a cushion of air. So it moves very, very easily. We're going to take the boring bar, which is the cutting part, sorry, right there. We're going to bring it into one of the cylinders while it's still floating. And kind of center it up in that cylinder. We're just picking one, it doesn't matter which one. Okay, then down in the cylinder, you'll see there's four. Get the light going, maybe you can't see them. One right there, there's one right there, there's also one over here, and then there's one in the back. Those are centering fingers for this particular brand. They call it cat paws, but there's a knob on the top of the machine that you rotate, and by rotating that knob, it pushes them outwardly so that they contact the cylinder, and basically allows you to line the boring bar into those right in the middle of the cylinders by tightening up those centering fingers or cat paws. Alright, so once it's tightened and it's centered, you come back over to the control panel, turn your float off, and that keeps it from moving, but you got to lock it. So the lock is an air pneumatic lock, and basically it just keeps anything from moving. It's very rigid now. It's ready to actually cut. So we're going to loosen our centering fingers, bring the cutting head up out of the way, and then we're going to actually get a cutting head. So over here on the table is where I have my tools, my cutting tools. So these are the actual tool that we're using to cut with. If I can get the light, maybe not. There's a very sharp tip on the end of this tool, and that's made out of a really dense metal called carbide. Carbide is kind of the ultimate cutting material because it's very hard. It doesn't wear. It's just a good metal to cut other metals with. So anyways, this particular cutting head is adjustable. You can make it longer or shorter, which makes it basically a bigger bore or a smaller bore, by setting it to the desired size using this micrometer. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up, get it ready, and then I'll show you how it works. I got my cutter adjusted to exactly where I want it to be, and I'm going to take it to the machine, and we're going to use the, come on, focus, maybe not. We're going to try to use this flat face, which I know it's not focusing. Sorry about that. Anyways, it's really flat here on the bottom. We're going to use that flat face to trim the top of the sleeve down. So you remember how these sleeves stick up? We're going to use that to cut the sleeve down. So basically we take the tool, we insert it into the boring bar all the way, and it kind of has to click into place. So to do that, I have a little block of wood and a hammer, this little thing right here. Let's see if I can tap it. Something like that. So I just take my little block of wood and I carefully make sure my tool is fully seated. That way it's the right diameter. And that flat cutting face right there is what's going to be used to trim the top of the sleeve. So let me go ahead and cut the machine on, and then we'll make some chips. Bring the cutting head down until it touches. You're touching. My hand. Go ahead and cut it. I think I'm going to go ahead and slow the machine down too, to a slower speed, just because it's cast iron. I'll wear my tool out by getting too hot. You see that the height of that is getting lesser and lesser and lesser. Pretty good. I don't want to go all the way down. I'm going to leave it up just a little bit, so I'm going to get most of it out of there. Position the light for you, hopefully. Maybe that helps. Okay, that's probably good enough for right now. We can cut more later if we need to. There's a little lip left, but we can break that off easily. But yeah, so one down, 3 more to go. I'll take care of that, and then we'll do it. So as you can see right now, all 4 cast iron sleeves have been pressed into place, and they're in there and good. Now I have to go ahead and rough bore the cylinders to match the size of the piston. So the idea here is we'll bore each of the cylinders until about 2.5, maybe 3 thousandths under the final size that we're hoping to achieve, and then I'll move the block over to the hone machine and hone it the rest of the way to give us our proper surface finish and clearances and all that. So it'll be pretty cool. So I've got the tool set up, everything's ready to go. We're lined up in that number, I think that's number 3 cylinder, which is where I usually start. So anyways, let me turn the machine on and go ahead and manually bring the cutter down until it starts to touch. It should be right about there. Go ahead and hit the feed and wait for it to engage. And it should get there right about now. Alright, let's see if we can see what's going on. Hard to see, I know, but there you can start to see a little bit of the line where it's boring down the sleeve. I've got it set very slow because it is cast iron, and I don't want to overheat the tool going too fast. So it's a pretty light cut. It's about 20 thousandths of an inch. So it's pretty light cut. But anyway, so we'll bore this probably, I would say, about 2 passes per cylinder, and then it'll get moved over to the hone, and then that'll be that. So pretty cool process. All right, I'm still boring. You can see that I got number 3 done. You can see the difference in surface finish between the number 3 cylinder there that's a lot shinier or smoother than the one next to it, and the one over here as well, number 4. It's rough cut. But I wanted to show you a little bit more about the machine, and I mentioned a little while ago that I really like this machine for a few reasons, and one of the main is because of the whole cat paw design, or the centering fingers. If you look, those number 1 cylinders being bored right now, and you can see that the little centering fingers are down inside the bore. They're not actually touching, but what makes this machine nice is you can adjust those so that while it's boring, I'm going to go ahead and start adjusting now. While it's boring, they actually ride gently, very, very slight drag, a little bit of pressure, all the way down the cylinder. Those cat paws do. What that does is it keeps this boring bar right here. As the boring goes deeper and deeper and deeper, that bar gets away from its bearing support, which is, you know, up in the machine. And it would tend to, not being supported very well, would wiggle around as it's boring and bore the hole off-centered. Well, those cat paws, by slightly dragging in the cylinder, just a little bit of tension, it basically just centers out the boring bar. So you end up with a really, really straight and true bore the whole way down. And this machine's really accurate. It does a great job, and there's very, very little inconsistency in the bore. You know, when you punch it through, the size at the top is the size at the bottom, and all throughout. So it does a really good job with that. Anyways, here we are. This is the 2nd cylinder that we're boring, the number 1 cylinder, and there's going to be 2 passes per cylinder. So this shouldn't take as long as the first, you know, process of boring out the block to get the sleeves in. This should be a lot faster than that. But I'm basically boring them down to about 3 thousandths smaller than what we're going to end up with when it's all said and done, and then we're going to hone the rest of the way. So you'll see that in just a few more minutes.